The Venezuelan government has rejected the presence of a US-guided missile destroyer close to its coasts. Supporters of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange gathered outside the Central Criminal Court of England and Wales this Thursday for the last day of his extradition hearing. Syria has reopened its Damascus airport after more than 6-month shutdown to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus. From the headquarters of TeleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South, and I'm Katrina Goss. And we begin in Venezuela, where the government has denounced the presence of the guided missile destroyer USS William P. Lawrence close to its coasts, describing the move as a provocation of the United States government. In a statement, the Venezuelan government addressed the national and international community to denounce the attempts by the United States Southern Command to intimidate the country through the presence of the vessel. The government pointed out that this is a deliberate act of provocation, which is both erratic and childish, and shows the lack of professional rigour of the United States Southern Command. The statement also expresses that Venezuela will not fall into absurd provocations that seek to alter the peace and security of the region, and reiterates the commitment to protect Venezuelan sovereignty and territorial integrity. A new migrant caravan has left Honduras for the United States. About 2,000 people, mostly young, started their long march in the first caravan since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. The group left from the northern city of San Pedro Sula and is expected to arrive in Guatemala in the next few hours. The Guatemala Migration Institute announced that it will require negative PCR tests for COVID-19 and ID documents or a passport in order to allow the migrants to enter the country. The Mexican Institute of Migration stated that it does not promote these caravans and will enforce immigration laws. For its part, the US Embassy in Honduras said that this practice is now more difficult and dangerous than ever. In Bolivia, it was revealed that both the de facto authorities and commanders of the armed forces are concealing information from official investigators about the massacres that followed the coup of November last year. Our correspondent Freddy Morales has the story.
More than 10 months after the massacres that followed the November coup, the High Command of the Armed Forces are reluctant to assist the investigations of the Public Prosecutor's Office and the Legislative Assembly.
The Public Prosecutor's Office has summoned the Chief Command of the Armed Forces so that they can make known the operational plan they developed in those days. Both in Secanta and in Sacaba, whatever, that report on the operations of the Armed Force has not been sent to the Public Prosecutor's Office.
The Attorney General provided new reports on the progress of the official investigations to the Joint Commission created by the Legislative Assembly. The Army claims that its orders and action plans are top secret.
The Armed Force claims military secrecy. A military secret must be lifted with a prior judicial authorization. We have proceeded this judicial authorization. However, there is a reluctance on the part of the Armed Force to provide us with the report of the operations, both in Sencarta and in Sacaba.
In the commission of senators and lawmakers created to investigate the 37 deaths during the November massacres, it was revealed that ministers of the de facto government, as well as troops and police officers, are resisting collaboration.
When we summon the army commanders, some departmental commanders respond to that they giving their full cooperation to this public ministry, which was investigating these events, and today the public ministry makes it clear that neither the government minister, nor other minister, nor the defense minister, nor the police and army authorities have so far responded to them.
It was noted that despite those obstacles, the investigation is nearing completion.
They think that by hiding, evading their responsibility, they will suppress the facts, their actions. And no, we will continue and we will identify the indirect and direct perpetrators, the instigator of these deaths that cannot go unpunished.
The Legislative Committee announced that it will issue its conclusions next week, which it will report to the plenary of the Assembly and to international human rights bodies. The demonstrations against the November coup massacres took place in the cities of El Alto and Cochabamba, with an official death toll of 37 people.
The Brazilian government of Jair Bolsonaro has been criticised for failing to protect the Amazon and other biodiverse regions of the country. The current environmental minister is now making moves that threaten the country's extensive mangrove forests. Our correspondent Brian Meir has the story.
Mangroves are fundamentally important to the health of our sea life and protection of our coastlines. Brazil is currently the nation with the world's second largest expanse of mangrove forest, but a recent move by Environmental Minister Ricardo Salles could end this.
The Bolsonaro government has restructured the National Environmental Council so that the majority of its members support the anti-environmental policies of he and his environmental minister Ricardo Salles, and with this they are revoking important environmental protection legislation. They just legalized construction projects in protected mangrove reserves.
In Cananea, a town located within a series of state and national parks that contains the largest expanse of mangrove forest in the Brazilian southeast, environmentalists are worried about what the government's new measures will do to local populations of animals like otters, shark, and dolphin, which rely on the mangroves for their survival.
Deforestation and deregulation will fragilize this environment. The impact will be fast, and these animals could cease to exist in this region, because this is a place where they eat and reproduce and live year-round.
The Workers' Party has submitted an emergency request to the Supreme Court to reinstate the laws protecting the mangroves, but even if they succeed, environmentalists are worried that the Bolsonaro government won't punish illegal logging and real estate development. Brian Muir, TeleSUR, Cananea.
Supporters of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange gathered outside the Central Criminal Court of England and Wales in London this Thursday for the last day of his extradition hearing. British District Judge Vanessa Barretza announced that she would deliver her decision on whether to grant a US extradition request for Assange at 10 a.m. on January 4th, 2021, adding that he would remain in custody at Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison unless any further application for bail was made. The judge previously denied Assange's bail petitions over fears he is a flight risk. Meanwhile, Assange's defence team has asked for another 4 weeks to submit its closing argument. US prosecutors indicted the 49-year-old Assange on 17 espionage charges and 1 charge of computer misuse over WikiLeaks' publication of secret military documents, largely relating to the wars conducted by the US in Afghanistan and Iraq. The case has received very limited mass media coverage despite its huge implications for investigative journalism and whistleblowing.
Julian is not a US citizen. He has never lived there. He did not sign an oath to the US government. He should not be sent there. Julian's duty is to the public, to publish evidence of wrongdoing, and that's what he did.
There was no hacking. There was no conspiracy. There was no harm. And when we peeled off the layers and layers of lies that have been presented, we are left with the truth. And that truth has been presented in this court in a very bleak manner. The truth is, this is journalism on trial. If Julian Assange is extradited, it will mean darkness for us all. It cannot happen. We must take a stand. There can only be one outcome: no extradition.
And as mentioned, this Thursday was the final day of WikiLeaks founder Julian Assange's extradition hearing. Our correspondent in London, Pablo Navarrete, brings us the details on today's events.
Today, Thursday, 1st of October, it is the final day of the close to 3 weeks of hearings that have taken place here at the Old Bailey in central London, where Julian Assange's defense and the prosecution on behalf of the Trump government in the US are looking at the extradition request that Trump has made for this journalist and publisher of WikiLeaks. Today is the 14th anniversary since WikiLeaks was created, and there will be a kind of commemoration by supporters of Julian Assange. There's also a contingent of Latin Americans in support of Julian Assange who have come out and will be celebrating his work. Now, as we know, there have been various witnesses brought forward during these last 3 weeks. Yesterday we heard how whistleblowers effectively from the security company, the Spanish security company that was providing the security for the embassy, the Ecuadorian embassy here in London, said that the information was passed on to the US government, and it's speculated that the CIA have taken this information as well. The then consul of Ecuador in the embassy at the time, Fidel Narvaez, has said that only that fact should make this should throw out this extradition request by the US government. Now, the British website Declassified UK, which covers the UK security state, has also done a number of articles showing irregularities in the judicial process, also links between the various judges overseeing these cases, and some links between right-wing politicians and, in some cases, security services. So today is the last day in the close to 3-week extradition hearings that have taken place here in the Old Bailey. The judge is expected to give her verdict in January 2021, but there are scope for many more appeals, effectively, if the extradition request gets approved. And so Julian Assange may remain in prison here in the UK for many more years.
Volunteers in Belarus began receiving shots of Russia's Sputnik V coronavirus vaccine on Thursday, making Belarus the first country outside Russia to test the potential vaccine since it was registered last month. The Belarusian volunteers are part of a group of 100 people to undergo the clinical trials at a Minsk hospital. Half of the group are being given a placebo and the other half the vaccine. A total of 8 Belarusian hospitals are taking part in the trial. So far, Belarus has reported over 79,000 coronavirus cases and 839 COVID-19 related deaths.
I learned about the vaccine from the media. The Health Ministry's site had published information saying that there would be clinical trials for the coronavirus vaccine. I searched for the addresses and names of the hospitals that would have it. I'm doing it to protect myself and those around me. Despite the fact that our roadmap was rather short, it fully complied with all safety procedures and was successfully completed. I will underline that the vaccine trial is being held in multiple centers, mostly in Russia. We ourselves will have a group of 100 volunteers.
And meanwhile, Russia announced the conclusion of early clinical trials for its second vaccine against COVID-19. The State Research Center of Virology and Biotechnology announced in a statement that the patent for its vaccine prototype was registered, and it is expected that the Ministry of Health will officially authorize it before October 15th. The number of new daily COVID-19 cases in the country has reached over 8,000, and the total now stands at over 1.7 million, representing the 4th highest total in the world. Vietnam detected 1 new COVID-19 case on Thursday, bringing its total number of confirmed cases to 1,095. The Vietnamese commission in charge of containing the epidemic informed that the new patient is a Russian expert who entered the country on September 26 and was complying with the regulatory quarantine in southern Kanto province. On Wednesday, 3 patients were discharged from hospitals for a total of 1,010 recoveries, representing 92% of confirmed cases. Among the patients still hospitalized, none is in a serious condition, and 14 have tested negative in 2 or 3 PCR tests and are thus likely to be discharged soon. This Thursday, China marks the 71st anniversary of the founding of the People's Republic of China, with an annual flag-raising ceremony in Tiananmen Square and other parts of the nation. In the framework of the celebrations, Chinese authorities reiterated the determination to achieve plans for socio-economic development in 2020, while overcoming internal and external challenges and moving towards territorial integration. From Thursday, the so-called Golden Week national holiday is to be observed across China, an initiative of the government to expand domestic tourism and allow more time for people to visit distant relatives. On Thursday, Syria reopened the Damascus International Airport to commercial flights after a more than 6-month shutdown to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus, with flights heading to Egypt, Lebanon and Russia.
Damascus International Airport was reopened after it followed preventive measures to curb the spread of the coronavirus, according to a protocol prepared by the Syrian Civil Aviation under the instructions of the International Civil Aviation Organization. Today, the first flight will take off to Cairo. Then we will gradually operate all the destinations that the national airline used to fly to, such as Lebanon, Cairo, Kuwait, Dubai, Sharjah, Algeria, Sudan, Iraq, and Russia.
The Jordanian government authorised mosques, churches, cafes and restaurants to reopen on Thursday, despite record levels of new coronavirus cases. Health officials said more than one-third of the reported cases stemmed from a single source. Despite the worsening outbreak, the government said that places of worship and eateries, which were closed 2 weeks ago, would be allowed to open starting Thursday with strict health and safety measures. The authorities also announced they were reinstating a mandatory 2-week home quarantine for people returning from red countries, that is those with high levels of virus infections. Prime Minister Omar Rassas also issued new orders to increase punishments for those violating the health measures.
We have been severely affected by the closure. We have had a lot of things to pay for, such as the rent of the shop, the salaries of the employees, because we were obliged to pay them. Other things such as water and electricity bills. With the restaurant sector, we're impacted the most. Thank God procedures began to ease. Yesterday, they issued a decision to open the restaurant's halls. I swear to God, if they ask us to shut down even for only one day, I will shut down my business for good. Even for only one day, if they ask us to close down the restaurant halls for 1 or 2 weeks, I will offer my restaurant for sale, honestly, because I cannot afford paying any extra bills. I can't afford more debts.
Lebanese Parliament Speaker Nabih Berri announced this Thursday that Lebanon and Israel would hold UN-mediated talks on the disputed land and maritime borders.
This is a framework agreement, and not the final one. This framework agreement draws the way for the Lebanese negotiator, which will be the Lebanese army with its efficient leadership and its specialized officers, sponsored by the Lebanese president and any future government.
Armenian and Azerbaijani forces intensified their shelling on Thursday, despite fresh calls from world leaders for an end to days of fighting over the disputed Nagorno-Karabakh region. The fiercest clashes between Armenian and Azerbaijani forces in years over the region ignited on Sunday, and the number of confirmed deaths neared 130 as fighting raged for a 5th day. An Armenian Defence Ministry spokesman said fighting had intensified in the morning following few exchanges at night, and that the country's troops had repelled Azerbaijani attacks. According to reports, fighters on the Armenian side have been forced to retreat from previously held positions along the entire stretch of the front line. On Thursday, a senior Afghan official announced that the government and Taliban negotiators are nearing a compromise on a key point that has stalled peace talks in Doha. The talks started in the Qatari capital on September 12th, but an optimistic beginning was marred by ongoing violence, and discussions were bogged down by disagreements over which interpretation of Islam should be used to frame laws in a post-conflict Afghanistan. Abdullah, chairman of Afghanistan's High Council for National Reconciliation, which is overseeing Kabul's push for peace, said that after several small group meetings in Doha, the issue had been resolved to a large extent. A first group of regional and international flights landed in South Africa early on Thursday as borders reopened after a more than 6-month shutdown to limit the spread of the novel coronavirus. While travel from all African countries is currently permitted, tourists from around 50 nations with high infection rates remain banned, including major sources of foreign visitors such as Britain, Russia and the United States. Visitors are required to present a negative coronavirus test taken less than 72 hours prior to departure. They will also be screened upon arrival and asked to install a coronavirus tracing app on their cell phones. Addressing the opening of an annual trade fair for the cocoa industry this Thursday, Ivorian President Alassane Ouattara announced a 21% increase in the price paid to cocoa farmers, noting that the decision would bring state support for the sector to over $6.3 million. Ivory Coast is the world's top cocoa producing country.
I am very pleased to announce that we have decided not to lower the prices to producers. This is the first good news. The second good news is that we have even decided to increase the price from 825 to 1,000 CFA francs per kilo. Ghana has set the price to producers at around 1,000 francs per kilogram. This increase reflects our commitment and determination in both countries to improve the incomes and living standards of our producer friends. This commitment and determination will continue and intensify.
And we've come to the end of this news brief, but remember you can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. You can also join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram and Telegram. For TeleSUR English, I'm Katrina Goss, and thank you for watching.